He thought the war was over the day he chose to walk away, and buried the part of himself that stayed behind. Out here in the frozen silence, it was just a man, a cabin, and a German shepherd who never stopped watching him. Until one night the dog didn't bark. It stood still, like it recognized something coming out of the dark. A wounded woman collapsed at his door, carrying a truth that should have stayed buried with his past. And somewhere beyond the trees, men were already moving, not rushing, not shouting, just waiting. Because they weren't here for her. They were here for the man who was never supposed to exist again. And before this night ends, he will have to choose, save the past or become the man who leaves again. Sometimes God doesn't erase our mistakes. He gives us one moment to choose differently, and that moment changes everything. Where are you watching from, and what would you do in his place? If this story moves you, please like and subscribe to help us reach 1,000 subscribers and keep these stories alive.
The lake had frozen over sometime in the night. Declan Ward noticed it without stepping outside. He didn't need to. The silence told him. Snow changed sound. Ice erased it. Out here in Wyoming, where the trees thinned and the world flattened into white and gray, silence wasn't peace. It was pressure. It settled into the bones, pressed against the walls of his cabin, and waited for something to break it. Declan stood near the window, one hand resting loosely against the frame. His other thumb moved unconsciously along the worn leather strap of his watch, tracing the same edge it always found when his thoughts started to circle. 7 years of living alone had sharpened certain instincts and dulled others. Behind him, Kane shifted. Not loudly. Never loudly. The German shepherd rose from his place near the door, slow and deliberate, muscles tightening under his coat. He didn't bark, didn't growl. He simply moved forward and stood directly in front of the door, blocking it. Declan turned his head slightly. That was wrong. Kane barked at strangers, growled at threats. But this stillness, this focused silence, was something else. "What is it?" Declan asked, his voice low, almost a habit more than a question. Kane didn't look back. His ears were forward, his body angled toward the outside world, as if something out there had already stepped too close. Declan's hand dropped from the window. He didn't rush. He never rushed anymore. But there was a shift in him, a quiet tightening, like something old waking up. He moved toward the door. The snow outside reflected enough light that he could see shapes, shadows, movement, if there was any. At first, there was nothing, just the white field stretching out toward the tree line. Then, something broke through it. A figure. Running. Declan's eyes narrowed. The shape stumbled once, then again, uneven, desperate. Whoever it was, they weren't moving with purpose. They were trying not to fall. Kane stepped forward, one pace closer to the door. The figure burst from the edge of the trees, a woman, and her coat was torn at the shoulder, dark fabric soaked through where the blood had spread and frozen at the edges. One hand pressed against her side, but it wasn't enough. Red trailed behind her in the snow, like something dragged. She didn't slow down, not until she reached the steps. Then her legs gave out. She hit the ground hard, the sound dull against the packed snow. Declan didn't think, not in words. He opened the door. Cold air cut through the cabin instantly, sharp and clean, carrying the metallic scent of blood. Kane moved first, fast now, no hesitation, circling wide, positioning himself between Declan and the tree line before Declan had even stepped outside. Declan reached her in 3 strides. Up close, she looked younger than he'd thought, early 30s maybe. pale skin pulled tight over sharp cheekbones. Strands of dark hair stuck to her face where snow had melted and refrozen. Her breathing was shallow, uneven. Gunshot. He saw it immediately. Clean entry, no exit. Whoever fired had known exactly where to aim. Not random, not panic. Declan slid an arm under her shoulders, lifting her just enough to keep her from collapsing face first into the snow again. "Hey," he said, quieter now. "Stay with me." Her eyes opened. They were clear. Too clear for someone bleeding out in the snow. She looked at him, not past him, not around him, directly at him, like she was confirming something. And then she spoke. "Don't turn on the lights." Her voice barely carried, but every word landed. "They're close." Kane's low growl started then. Not loud, not aggressive. A warning. Declan felt it in his chest more than he heard it. He didn't ask questions. He pulled her inside. The door shut behind them with a solid, final sound. Inside, the cabin held its warmth, but the cold followed anyway, clinging to her clothes, to the blood soaking through the fabric. Declan lowered her onto the worn couch near the wall, his movements controlled, efficient. He'd done this before. Too many times. He cut through the damaged layers with a small knife, exposing the wound. Blood welled up immediately, dark against her pale skin. She didn't cry out, didn't flinch. Her jaw tightened, but that was all. "Who did this?" Declan asked. Her head moved slightly. "No time." Her hand caught his sleeve, not strong, but deliberate. "They're not going to knock." Kane shifted again, and this time his body angled toward the back of the cabin. Declan followed the movement instinctively, and then he heard it. Faint, almost lost beneath the wind. Footsteps, not one, more than one, measured, spaced, moving in a pattern that didn't belong to hikers or lost travelers. Declan's grip on the knife tightened before he forced himself to set it down. He moved to the table, opened the drawer beneath it, and pulled out a handgun. The weight settled into his palm like something familiar he had tried, unsuccessfully, to forget. Behind him, the woman. She had said her name, hadn't she? No, she hadn't. Not yet. Kane's growl deepened. Then, a soft metallic click. From the back door, someone was testing it, not forcing. Not yet. Just checking. Declan didn't raise his voice, didn't call out. He stepped into position, angled just enough to cover the line between the door and the interior of the cabin. The handle shifted slightly. Another test. Kane moved first. A blur of muscle and intent, he lunged toward the door just as the pressure on the handle increased. Declan fired. One shot. Loud, final, echoing through the cabin and out into the snow. Silence followed. Immediate. Total. The pressure on the door disappeared. The footsteps outside. Gone. Not running. Just gone. Declan didn't lower the gun right away. He waited. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing came back. Behind him, the woman exhaled slowly, her grip on his sleeve finally loosening. "They're not leaving," she said. Her voice was steadier now, but it carried something heavier than fear. "They're just adjusting." Declan kept his eyes on the door. His reflection stared back at him in the dark glass of the window beside it. Older than he remembered. Harder. Shaped by choices he didn't talk about. He understood what she meant. Out there, in the snow, whoever had come for her wasn't rushing. They weren't afraid, and that made them dangerous in a way panic never could. Declan finally lowered the gun. Kane didn't. The dog remained fixed in place, eyes locked on the door, body still as stone. Declan spoke quietly, almost to himself. "They're not in a hurry." The woman closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. "No," she said. "They don't need to be." The bleeding slowed before it stopped. Declan worked without speaking, hands steady, pressure exact. He packed the wound, wrapped it tight, and kept his movements efficient. No wasted motion, no hesitation. The kind of control that didn't come from practice alone, but from knowing what happened when you lost it. Iris didn't thank him. She watched. Even while drifting in and out, her eyes tracked everything. His hands, the door, the windows. Kane. Not fear. Assessment. That bothered him more than the blood. "You're going to make it," Declan said, more out of habit than reassurance. She didn't answer. Minutes passed. The cabin held its quiet again, but it wasn't the same silence as before. And this one had edges. It felt watched. Then her voice came back, low but clear. "You're not the one they came to kill." Declan didn't look up immediately. He finished tying the last knot, then sat back slightly, studying her. "Then who are they here for?" he asked. Her gaze didn't shift. "You." Declan let out a slow breath, almost a laugh, but without humor. "You've got the wrong place." "I don't," she said. Her fingers tightened weakly against the edge of the couch, as if anchoring herself to the moment. "You're Declan Ward." It wasn't a question. Something in his chest tightened, not sudden, not sharp, but familiar, like an old bruise pressed too hard. "Not anymore," he said. Iris's lips pressed together, a flicker of something crossing her face. Frustration, maybe, or disbelief. "That's the problem," she replied. Outside, the wind shifted. Kane's head turned sharply, nose lifting just enough to catch something carried on the air. Declan noticed it. He always noticed the dog before anything else. "What is it?" he asked quietly. Kane didn't move toward the door this time. Instead, he stepped back, one pace, and angled his body toward the rear of the cabin, muscles tightening in a different way. Not defensive. Recognizing. Declan followed the line of his gaze. "Talk," he said to Iris. She swallowed once, the movement slow. "I used to move people," she said. "Not across borders. Off them." Declan's brow creased slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means," she continued, her voice steadier now, "if someone needed to disappear completely, my network made it happen." Declan leaned back in his chair, arms resting loosely on his thighs, but his posture had shifted. Not relaxed. Ready. "Witness protection?" Iris shook her head faintly. "No records, no courts, no oversight." A pause. "No coming back." Declan's eyes held hers. "And I was one of those people?" "You were a file," she said. "A very specific one." He didn't react outwardly, but his thumb found the edge of his watch again, pressing into the worn leather. "What kind of file?" he asked. Iris hesitated. Not because she didn't know, because she was deciding how much to say. "You weren't marked as dead," she said finally. "You were marked as removed." Declan's gaze sharpened. "That's a difference without meaning." "It has meaning," she said. "Dead people leave trails. Paper. Reports. Graves." She held his eyes. "You don't have any of those." The cabin felt smaller for a moment. Declan's jaw tightened slightly. "I've been living here for 7 years," he said. "That's a trail." "No," Iris replied quietly. That's isolation. Before he could respond, the lights went out. Everything. Instant. The overhead bulb died with a soft click. The low hum of electricity vanished, and even the small radio on the shelf went silent. Darkness filled the room, broken only by the pale reflection of snow through the windows. Declan didn't move right away. He listened. Kane didn't growl this time. He froze. Not fear. Not warning. Recognition. That was worse. Declan stood slowly, one hand already reaching for the handgun on the table. He didn't rush to turn anything back on. He knew better. They cut the power? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Iris nodded faintly. Or something upstream, she said. Either way, we're off the grid now. Declan moved toward the back of the cabin, every step deliberate. The silence outside had changed again. It wasn't empty anymore. It was occupied. Then Kane shifted, just slightly. His ears twitched, his body angling toward the rear door. And then, without warning, he let out a low sound. Not a growl, not a bark. Something deeper. Declan felt it more than heard it. He stopped. The back door stood in shadow, barely outlined against the pale snow beyond. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a figure moved, not quickly, not hiding, just there. A man stood beyond the door, half lit by the reflected snow. Tall, still, his outline clean against the dark of the trees behind him. He didn't raise a weapon, didn't step forward, didn't even try the handle this time. He just stood there, watching. Declan raised the gun slightly, not aiming directly, but ready. The man tilted his head, just enough to acknowledge the movement. Still no words, still no threat. Just presence. Behind Declan, Iris shifted, trying to push herself up despite the pain. "Don't," she whispered. Declan didn't take his eyes off the door. "Friend of yours?" he asked. "No," she said. "Worse." The man outside took one slow step closer. Snow compressed under his boot, the sound faint but deliberate. Then he stopped again. Close enough now that Declan could make out more detail. Clean lines, controlled posture. Not bulky, not careless. Professional. The man lifted his hand, not to knock, not to reach for the handle, just raised it. A small gesture, almost like a greeting. Kane didn't move. That was what made Declan's grip tighten. If it were danger, the dog would react. If it were prey, he'd lunge. But this was something Kane knew. The man lowered his hand, held Declan's gaze for one final second, then turned, and walked back into the trees. No rush, no hesitation. Gone in a matter of seconds. The snow swallowed him. The silence returned. Declan didn't lower the gun immediately. He waited, counted, listened. Nothing came back. Behind him, Iris exhaled slowly, her body sinking back against the couch. "They're not here to rush you," she said. Declan finally lowered the weapon, though his posture didn't soften. "No," he said quietly. He looked at the door, then at Kane, then back to the empty space beyond the glass. "They're here to make sure you don't go anywhere."
They don't leave survivors. They didn't leave him, she said. They took him. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was crowded, with images half-formed, fragmented, refusing to settle into something complete. Declan turned slightly, pacing once across the narrow space, then back again. "No," he said. "If that were true, I would have heard something." "You weren't meant to," Iris replied. That stopped him. He looked at her again, harder this time. What does that mean? It means your file wasn't just erased, she said. It was altered. Declan's stomach tightened. Altered how? Iris's voice softened, but it didn't lose its edge. Your report says he died on impact, she said. And it says you verified it. Declan's breath caught, just for a second. Then he shook his head. I didn't. You signed it, she said. The words cut clean. Declan's mind searched, fast, instinctive, but found nothing solid, just gaps, blurred edges, a moment that should have been clear and wasn't. I didn't see a body, he said, quieter now. No, Iris agreed. You didn't. The room seemed to close in around him. Then why would I sign that? He asked. Iris didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice carried something new, not fear, not even urgency, just certainty. Because you were told to leave, she said. Declan stared at her. And you did. That landed differently, not like a blow, like a weight. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, Kane moved. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't aggressive. He simply stepped forward, slow and deliberate, until he stood between them. Declan froze. The dog didn't look at Iris. He didn't look at the door. He looked at Declan. Amber eyes steady, unblinking, waiting. Declan's chest tightened again, sharper this time. What is it? He asked, softer now. Kane didn't move, didn't growl, didn't shift his stance. He just stood there, holding that line. Declan felt something in that moment, something he couldn't name but couldn't ignore either. Recognition. Not from the dog, from himself. He lowered the gun slightly, not taking his eyes off Kane. What aren't you telling me? He asked, though the question wasn't directed at Iris anymore. Kane's ears flicked once, that was all. Behind him, Iris spoke again. There's more, she said. Declan didn't turn. Say it. Iris drew in a breath and let it out slowly. The man you left behind, she said, wasn't just part of your team. Declan's grip on the gun tightened again. He had a dog, she continued. That was enough. Declan's eyes flicked down just for a second, to Kane. The dog didn't move, didn't react, but the silence around him deepened, as if the air itself had shifted. He was trained alongside it, Iris said. Handled it, trusted it. Declan's voice came out lower now. Stop. But she didn't. Kane was his. The words settled into the room like something permanent. Declan felt the ground beneath him slip, not physically, but in the way everything he thought he understood about the past began to realign into something else. He looked at the dog again, really looked this time, at the slight bend in the ear, the scar hidden beneath the fur. The way he held himself, not like an animal waiting for a command, but like something that had already chosen where it stood. You're wrong, Declan said. But it didn't sound convincing. Iris didn't argue. She didn't need to. Kane shifted his weight slightly. And still between them, still unmoving, still watching Declan, not accusing, not threatening, just waiting. And for the first time since the woman had fallen through his door, Declan felt something he hadn't allowed himself in years. Not fear, not anger, something worse, the possibility that he had never really known what he left behind. The cabin didn't feel like a place anymore. It felt like a question. Declan stood near the table, the gun still in his hand, though he wasn't aiming it at anything. The darkness from the outage had settled into every corner, broken only by the dim blue reflection of snow pressing in through the windows. Iris watched him from the couch, not with fear, with expectation. You're going to tell me everything, Declan said. It wasn't raised. It didn't need to be. Iris shifted slightly, wincing as the movement pulled at her wound. She drew a slow breath, steadying herself before she spoke. You already know the part that matters, she said. You just don't remember it correctly. Declan's jaw tightened. Try me. For a moment, she didn't answer. Her eyes drifted, not to the door this time, not to Kane, but to the floor, as if she were searching for the right place to begin. I wasn't just moving people, she said quietly. I was managing records, filtering identities, deciding who stayed visible and who didn't. Declan didn't react, but something in him shifted. And I was one of your decisions, he said. Iris met his eyes again. Yes. The word landed harder than he expected. He'd been told he was gone. He'd accepted that, built a life around it. But hearing someone say they had chosen it, that was different. Why? He asked. Because of what you were connected to, she said. Your last operation, your team, the fallout after. Declan's fingers curled slightly around the grip of the gun. That doesn't answer the question. No, she admitted. It doesn't. She swallowed, then forced herself to continue. You weren't marked as a casualty, she said. You were marked as a liability. Declan let out a slow breath through his nose. By who? Iris hesitated again. People who don't make mistakes twice. The cabin fell quiet. Kane shifted. Not sharply, not alert. Just repositioning. Declan glanced down at him, then back to Iris. You said you managed records, he said. That includes mine. Yes. Then you know what happened out there. Her silence answered before her words did. Declan stepped closer, the floorboards creaking under his weight. I want the part I don't remember, he said. Iris looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. There was someone you left behind, she said. Declan's expression didn't change. I know that. No, she replied. You know of it. You don't know what happened after. Something tightened in his chest. He didn't like the direction this was going. Then tell me. Iris leaned back slightly, her voice steady but lower now. He didn't die, she said. The words hung in the air. Declan blinked once, slow. That's not possible. It is, she said. He was found, not by your people. A pause. By theirs. Declan felt the room tilt, not physically, but somewhere deeper, where memory and instinct collided. What do you mean, theirs? He asked. Iris didn't look away. The same people who came here tonight. Declan's grip tightened around the gun. The cabin stopped feeling like shelter. It became a boundary. Declan knew the moment it happened, not from what he saw, but from what he couldn't. No movement in the tree line, no shifting shadows, no mistakes. They weren't circling anymore. They had already chosen their positions. He moved slowly from one window to the next, not exposing himself fully, just enough to confirm what instinct had already told him. Angles covered, distances measured, lines of fire established. Whoever was out there had taken their time, and now they owned the ground. Behind him, Iris didn't speak. She had pushed herself upright despite the pain, her back against the wall, one hand pressed hard against her side. Blood had slowed, but not stopped. Her face had gone pale again, but her eyes were steady, watching him, waiting. Kane stood near the center of the room now, not guarding the door, not guarding Iris, just positioned, balanced, like he was waiting for something to resolve. Declan stepped away from the window. They're not guessing, he said. They know exactly where we are. Iris nodded once. They always do. Declan looked at her, then back toward the darkened window. How many? Enough. That wasn't useful, but it felt true. Then, a voice, clear, calm, close enough that it didn't need to be raised. You've always preferred corners, Declan. Declan didn't flinch. Oh, but something inside him locked into place. He stepped toward the front of the cabin, gun lowered but ready, eyes fixed on the door. I don't hide in corners, he said. A pause. Then the voice again. No, it replied. You leave them. The words landed differently than anything Iris had said. Not information. Recognition. Declan moved just enough to catch a silhouette through the window. A man stood beyond the porch. Still. Perfectly still. The snow around him reflected just enough light to outline his shape. Tall, lean, posture straight but not rigid. He wore a long, dark coat, clean lines, no unnecessary movement. Even from this distance, there was something controlled about him, intentional. The man stepped forward once, into clearer view. His face came into partial light, pale, composed, eyes set deep beneath a calm expression that didn't change when he met Declan's gaze. No anger, no urgency, just certainty. "Victor Hale," Iris said behind him, her voice barely above a breath. Declan didn't look back. He didn't need to. "I figured you'd come yourself," Declan said. Victor's head tilted slightly. "I didn't think you'd still be here," he replied. "But then again, you have a habit of staying exactly where you shouldn't." Declan's grip on the gun remained steady. "You're a long way from wherever you think you belong." Victor's expression didn't change. "I belong wherever the work requires me," he said. Silence stretched between them. Not empty. Measured. Victor took another step forward, not close enough to threaten, just close enough to be heard clearly. "You don't remember it the way it happened," he said. Declan's jaw tightened. I remember enough." "No," Victor said softly. "You remember what you allowed yourself to keep." Behind him, Iris shifted. Declan didn't turn. "What do you want?" he asked. Victor's gaze flicked briefly, just once, toward the interior of the cabin where Iris sat. Then back to Declan. "You already know," he said. "Say it." Victor exhaled lightly, almost amused. "The woman," he said. "You give her to me, and this ends without unnecessary damage." Declan didn't respond immediately. His eyes remained fixed on Victor. "And if I don't?" Victor's tone didn't change. "Then we proceed." Declan almost smiled. Almost. "That's not an answer." Victor tilted his head again, considering. "No," he said. It's not." He let the silence settle again before continuing. "You've always needed clarity," he added. "So let me give it to you." His voice lowered slightly, not quieter, but sharper. "In your last operation, you weren't following orders." Declan's breath slowed. Victor held his gaze. "You gave them." That landed heavier than anything else, not because it was loud, because it fit too well. "You made the call to pull back," Victor continued. "You assessed the situation, you calculated the risk, and you decided that leaving one man behind was acceptable." Declan didn't speak, didn't move. "You didn't hesitate," Victor said. "That's what made you valuable." A pause. "And that's what made you dangerous." Something shifted in Declan's chest. Not doubt, recognition. He didn't like it. He didn't reject it. He simply understood it. Victor took another step, still outside, still controlled. "And now you're here," he said. "Repeating the same pattern." Declan's eyes narrowed. "You don't know anything about what I'm doing here." Victor's expression remained unchanged. "You're protecting someone who compromised you," he said. "Someone who helped erase you." He gestured lightly toward the interior. "And you're doing it because you need to believe you're not the man who walked away." Behind Declan, Iris didn't speak. She didn't defend herself. She didn't deny it. She just watched him, waiting. The cabin felt smaller again, not physically, but in the way the choices inside it had narrowed. Victor's voice softened just slightly. "You don't have to prove anything," he said. "You just have to make the correct decision." Declan didn't respond. Victor gave him a moment. Then, "I'll give you one option," he said. Declan's grip on the gun tightened again. "Just one?" Victor nodded faintly. "You give me Iris Cole," he said, "and I leave." A beat. "You and the dog walk away." Silence. No wind, no movement. Just the weight of the offer settling into the room. Behind him, Iris shifted again. Not toward the door, not away from it, but just adjusting. Her eyes found Declan's. She didn't speak, didn't plead, didn't argue. She just looked at him. Declan felt it, that expectation, that question. He didn't answer it. Not yet. Instead, he lowered the gun slightly. Not surrender, not trust, just enough to ease the tension in his arm. Then he looked down. At Kane. The dog stood where he had before. Between them. Declan and Iris. Unmoving, unreadable. For a moment, Declan expected him to step forward, to choose, to return to his side like he always had. Kane didn't move, didn't shift, didn't even blink. He just stayed there. and for the first time since the night had begun, he didn't come when Declan looked at him. Declan didn't answer Victor, not with words. He just shifted his weight, subtle, controlled, and that was enough. Victor saw it. The smallest change in posture, the absence of hesitation. A decision had been made. Unfortunate, Victor said quietly. Then, everything broke. The first shot didn't come from Declan. It came from outside, sharp, suppressed, cutting through the stillness like something already expected. Glass fractured along the side window, splintering inward. Declan moved instantly. He grabbed the edge of the table and flipped it onto its side, dragging Iris down with him as wood slammed against the floor, forming a crude barrier between them and the incoming fire. Stay down, he said. No wasted breath, no second thought. The cabin filled with motion, bullets punching through walls, splinters tearing loose, the air thick with the sound of impact instead of silence. The snow outside reflected everything, every flash, every movement, every mistake. Declan fired back once, twice, not blindly but with purpose, aiming for the angles he had already mapped in his head, not to win, to create space. Kane moved, not toward Declan, not toward Iris, forward, straight into the line of conflict, low, fast, silent, the way he had been trained. Declan saw him go, but he didn't call him back, because he understood. And for the first time since the night began, he understood exactly what the dog had been waiting for. The pressure shifted, shots redirected. One of the figures outside staggered, pulled off balance by something unseen in the snow. Kane. Declan took the opening. 2 more shots, closer now, more precise. Then, a sound, short, sharp, different. Kane. Declan's head snapped toward the doorway. The dog stumbled into view, momentum carrying him forward before his legs gave out beneath him. He hit the floor hard, sliding across the wood. Blood followed, dark, immediate. Declan's chest tightened, but he didn't move, not yet. Outside, footsteps adjusted. Victor was repositioning, closing distance. Declan's mind calculated faster than his body could react. 2 options: pull Kane back, lose ground, or hold the line and risk everything else. Behind him, Iris spoke, not loudly, not urgently, just clearly. If you stop now, we don't get another chance. Declan didn't look at her. He didn't need to. He already knew. He lowered himself slightly, adjusting his angle, ignoring the part of him that wanted to reach for the dog. He fired again. Not out the window, through it. The glass shattered outward this time, sending a burst of frozen air into the cabin as the shot cut across the porch. A body dropped. Declan moved forward, 1 step, then another, pushing the line outward. Kane lay behind him, breathing, but not moving. The distance between them stretched, not far, but far enough. Victor appeared at the edge of the doorway, closer now, clearer. His coat moved slightly in the wind, but his expression hadn't changed. And not even with the chaos around him. Still choosing wrong, he said. Declan didn't answer. Victor stepped forward once more, close enough now that there was no barrier between them, no distance left to calculate, just outcome. Declan raised the gun. Victor didn't flinch. You think this ends because you hold a weapon? Victor asked. Declan's eyes didn't leave his. No, he said. His free hand reached behind him, slow, deliberate, and found the small metal device resting on the floor beside Iris. Cold, solid, important. Victor's gaze flicked to it, for the first time. Something changed, not fear, but awareness. That doesn't help you, Victor said. Declan pressed the device. But nothing dramatic, no sound, no light, just a quiet confirmation, a system completing its purpose. Iris exhaled slowly behind him. It's out, she said. Victor understood immediately. Declan saw it in his eyes, the calculation, the shift, the realization that whatever control he had maintained up to this point was gone. The information was no longer contained, no longer his to manage. For the first time, Victor didn't speak. He stepped back, just once, then turned and disappeared into the snow. Not running, not retreating in panic, just leaving. The remaining figures outside followed, not in chaos, in order, like a system shutting itself down. The silence returned, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This one felt finished. Declan lowered the gun, slowly, carefully, then he turned. Kane hadn't moved. Declan crossed the distance in 2 steps and dropped beside him, hands already checking the wound. Leg, clean entry, bad angle, blood loss, but not fatal. "Stay with me," Declan said, his voice quieter now, not commanding, not controlled, just human. Kane's eyes opened slightly, focused, on him. Declan let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Behind him, Iris leaned against the wall, her strength finally giving way. "It's done," she said. Declan didn't answer. He was already tearing fabric, binding the wound, stabilizing what he could. And the night passed without another sound. Morning came slowly. The storm had moved on. The sky cleared, pale and open, sunlight reflecting off untouched snow. Declan stood at the door. Kane lay just inside, his breathing steady now, though one leg remained still, wrapped tight. Declan opened the door. Cold air filled the space again. He stepped outside. The snow stretched out in every direction, clean, unbroken, no tracks, no sign that anyone had ever been there. Declan stood there for a long moment, then he turned back. Kane hadn't moved, but he was watching him. Declan stepped aside, left the door open, not as an invitation, not as a test, just open. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, Kane shifted, slowly, carefully. He pushed himself up, favoring the injured leg, each movement deliberate. Declan didn't speak, didn't move. He just waited. Kane took one step, then another, crossing the distance between them, not quickly, not easily, but with purpose. When he reached Declan, he didn't stop in front of him. He moved past him, then turned and lowered himself down beside him, close, not because he was told, because he chose to be. Declan looked down at him. His hand rested lightly on the dog's back, warm, real, still there. He exhaled slowly. "There are things," he said quietly, "you don't get to fix." The snow outside reflected the morning light, bright and endless. "But sometimes," he paused, his fingers pressed gently into the fur beneath his hand, "you get to stop leaving. Sometimes the hardest thing isn't surviving the moment. It's choosing not to walk away when it matters. We all carry decisions we wish we could undo, but life doesn't always give us a second chance to fix the past. It gives us a choice in the present, to stay, to stand, to not leave again." Maybe that's where grace quietly lives, not in erasing what we've done, but in giving us one moment where we choose differently. If this story stayed with you, I'd love to hear what part spoke to you the most. Feel free to share your thoughts below and subscribe if you want more stories like this. Wherever you are right now, may you find the strength to stay when it matters, and the peace to believe it's not too late to choose right.